The Dow Jones had one of its largest single-day jumps in history, gaining 669 points. The markets were already up by 2% at the opening bell this morning, with news the United States and China have started negotiating on trade. China agreed to the talks after the Trump administration placed tariffs on imports of Chinese goods totaling $60 billion. The Chinese Friday night responded with $3 billion of their own tariffs. For more on this, we turn to host of Boom Bust here on RT, Bart Chilton. Bart, good to have you with us tonight. What happened? Your analysis of what brought us such a good day on Wall Street.
Well, I think people were ready to go to, DEFCON 1, Ed, with all the trade talk, and the Chinese in particular seemed to take it in stride and not, for example, retaliate specifically to the $50 billion in proposed additional tariffs. That's in addition to the steel and aluminum tariffs. And, the Chinese always play a long game here, and I think the markets looked at that. This was particularly the case, Ed, with regard to the tech sector. Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft account for about 10% of the Standard & Poor's 500, the S&P 500. So China has a big impact on tech stocks, and the leveling out, the sort of calming things down, as you mentioned, over the weekend, starting Friday, I think helped markets to rebound, and that's what we're seeing. Dow up, as you said, 670 points. That's 2.5%. That's a big day.
Yeah, no question about it. Did the president call the Chinese, did he call their bluff? Was this a gamble of sorts? No other president's done this to China before, and China comes to the table saying, all right, the United States, you're too big a customer, we got to talk. What about that?
Well, it's easy to make that argument, and I don't discount it, Ed, but the Chinese also play a very long-term game. I mean, they're talking about 5-year plans and 200-year plans they even have. And in the U.S., I think the plan is mainly about the midterm elections coming up. And from that perspective, I think that the Chinese are playing somewhat into President Trump's hand, but they realize that this is a longer term. This is longer than just the midterms, longer than even this presidency. They've got a lot at stake here because they are a major exporter and they're the largest economy out there. So I think they're playing it pretty smart without blowing things up. Yeah. And we'll have to see what happens from here. But I look for some announcement from the Chinese. The negotiations so far have been going pretty slow, and so this may have fuel ejected them. But I think before the midterm elections, Ed, we'll probably see some announcement that the president can take credit for, and therefore candidates that are aligned with him will also take credit for that.
Well, China and Japan service our debt. A poor economy does them no good whatsoever. America being the #1 customer means an awful lot. Let's talk geopolitical. The political scene right now. Do you think the president's actions on Russia had anything to do with the market today? This is the first big response that the president has had to Russia.
I'm not sure that it have. I think it's more about the trade in China, Ed. It was such a big deal, and people thought we were headed down this really rough road with the Chinese in particular, that I think, and again, I think the tech industry is so tied to what was going on that I think that's really why the markets move. Now, you know, people can develop, reasons for about anything in these markets today, which is why they're so interesting to watch. For example, about 2 o'clock this afternoon, Google jumped by $20 in like half an hour. And there's no real rhyme or reason to it. There's nothing you can look at it. So you got to watch these things carefully and look at all sides.
Quickly, you think it's going to be a big week? I mean, that's what Americans are looking for. Could it happen?
It could happen. Now, we're still down on the markets overall this year, Ed, but I think we've sort of settled out, and I think we could see another big week on Wall Street, and we'll be looking at it at Boom Bust, and I know you'll be looking at it on the news.
All right, host of Boom Bust with us tonight, Bart Chilton. Bart, always a pleasure. Good to have you with us. Thanks so much.